What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Critter format video. And in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the classic anime decks available in this format, which is Harpies. Now, Harpies will go on later in the TCG to get a lot more support and become a more fully fleshed out strategy. But in Metal Raiders itself, the only really support cards that were released were Harpy Lady, the normal monster as a base, Elegant Egotist, a spell that can summon out another Harpy Lady, or summon out Harpy Lady Sisters if you have a Harpy Lady on the field. Now, this may not seem like much, but it is not that bad. Harpy Lady Sisters has 1950 attack, which does get over most standard beaters in the format, even if it doesn't get over something like Jiraigumo. And Harpy Lady itself has pretty good stats for the format. 1400 defense is like the standard good defense that you can have on a monster. And it's part of the reason why Mass Sorcerer is so good, because not many cards, except for the like 1800 beaters or above, really see that much play in the main deck in a lot of Critter decks. So 1400 defense can be good enough for a lot of situations. The strategy, of course, is not perfect, and there are different ways that you can build it. But I've settled on this version of the deck that I really enjoy, and I'm excited to show it off with you today. But before diving into the deck breakdown, if you like this sort of content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We are at about 260 subscribers at the time of recording. I think it would be really cool to reach 300 by the end of the year. That'd be a really awesome milestone to hit. Also, given that my coverage of Critter format is sort of winding down, I'm going to be going into newer formats, so there's exciting things on the horizon for the channel, and I hope that you'll all be here with me to experience the journey. But now that that's out of the way, let's dive in to Harpies and explain how exactly this deck is aiming to function. You may notice that the Harpy package in this deck isn't actually that large. It's just 5 cards. 2 Harpy Lady, 2 Elegant Egotist, and 1 Harpy Lady Sisters, and that's intentional. These cards are basically meant to be a sort of surprise damage push out of nowhere, as, you know, if you clear your opponent's board and bring out a Harpy Lady and a Harpy Lady Sisters, that's 3250 damage out of essentially nowhere, which can be a lot for your opponent to handle. In addition, if you have something like Cannon Soldier on field to then tribute away the board, you know, that could just be enough to finish them off. So we've got this very small Harpy package because it's meant to be like sort of a one-time play that you make near the middle or end of the game. And the deck as a whole is largely just sort of a Muka Muka turbo deck. So we've got 3 Muka Mukas in the deck, which, you know, gains attack based on how many cards are in your hand. And that pairs well with something like Harpies, as you'll likely draw cards that you don't want to use or commit to the board right away. And in the case of Harpy Lady Sisters, if you do draw it, you actually can't really get it out of your hand. So you're likely to have a lot of excess cards in hand, and Muka Muka can capitalize on that a bit. Since we are playing a Muka Muka Turbo sort of strategy, we also have 3 Thunder Dragon to buff up the hand a little bit. Thunder Dragon can also be nice because it triggers something like Last Will, which we can use to fetch out a Harpy Lady if we need it. We can also use it to fetch out a Cannon Soldier, or just any of our other great, you know, 1500 or less attack monsters, including a Muka Muka if we want it. In addition to search out the Muka Mukas or the Harpy Ladies, we've got 2 Sangan, 2 Witch of the Black Forest, these sort of superstar monsters of the format. Between these 2 recruiters, you can search out pretty much any monster in the deck except for Harpy Lady Sisters, but you never want to search out Harpy Lady Sisters anyways, because it's basically useless in the hand. Lastly, for the monsters, we have 3 Lodge In, just to get the additional pressure going. Given that we're trying to win through basically a big unexpected damage push, you want to keep up the aggressive pressure throughout most of the game. Moving on to the spells, we have 1 Card Destruction. This is a bit awkward in this deck because if you do draw the 1 Harpy Lady Sisters that you have, and you want to play the Card Destruction, you're basically cutting off the Harpy strategy entirely, as you can't actually summon Harpy Lady Sisters from the graveyard with Elegant Egotist. It must be summoned from the hand or deck. So it's a bit of an awkward card, but, you know, the deck really suffers against Exodia, so we want this in here for that. And if we don't have Harpy Lady Sisters in hand, it can help us draw into the combo pieces that we want more easily. In addition, it does pair well with the Thunder Dragons, so All in all, I think that card destruction does have a place in this deck, even if it can be awkward at times. We also have the Power 5 limited spells, of course, Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, and Raigeki, all insanely strong. Reborn, as a note, can actually be used to get back Harpy Lady Sisters if you want it, as long as that Harpy Lady Sisters has been summoned with Elegant Egotist at some point previously in the game. This is because Harpy Lady Sisters as a clause must first be special summoned with Elegant Egotist. This means that you can't sort of do a play where you discard it with card destruction and then try to reborn it, as it won't have met its summoning condition. So that's an important thing to note with this deck if you're trying to pull off some card destruction shenanigans. Moving on to our other spells, we of course have 2 Elegant Egotist. We have 2 because we do want to draw this card and it is non-searchable. And also in an ideal situation, we can actually pull off 2 Elegant Egotist summons, as this card doesn't necessarily need to summon out Harpy Lady Sisters. It can also summon out a copy of Harpy Lady from the deck. Obviously not as good as summoning out Harpy Lady Sisters, but it is an option if we want to use it, or if we have to use it. We could potentially play 3 to increase the chances of drawing this, but if we did play 3, we wouldn't have a full 3 targets really in deck. So we'd have to also up the Harpy count, which I don't really want to do, as if you add too many Harpies, the deck becomes a bit too bricky and awkward, and you can't really capitalize on the damage pushes that the Harpies can provide. For the other spells, we have 3 Fissure. This is great at clearing the way for our monsters to attack in. 2 Heavy Storm to clear the way for our big damage pushes. We have 2 Last Will, which is very good at fetching out a myriad of monsters from the deck, and can also be used to fetch out a Harpy Lady if you do have Elegant Egotist in hand. And lastly, we have 2 Swords of Revealing Light. A great card in this format, can stall for a bit to allow you time to draw into your combo pieces, which is quite necessary for the deck. For the traps, we have 1 Mirror Force, crazy card in this format, very good. We have 3 7 Tools of the Bandit as our counter trap of choice. This is very important, as this deck doesn't really have the defensive capabilities to play something like Solemn Judgment instead. This can be great when paired with like a Heavy Storm. If you have this set, activate Heavy, your opponent tries to chain Waboku, you chain 7 Tools of the Bandit. It can be very good at getting an unexpected damage push in. And it can also just be good at keeping your regular aggressive pressure up, as you don't really need to commit half your life points to stopping a trap hole on a Muka Muka, for instance. So 7 tools, very good here. We also have 3 Waboku to protect our monsters and our life points. Again, as I said, this deck doesn't really have as much defensive capabilities as some other decks do, so I do like Waboku here. You may note that we're not actually playing any trap holes in the main deck, and this is very intentional. We don't really have the deck space to play the full regular suite of traps that we do in other decks, and honestly, Trap Hole is not the best in this format. It can't stop mass sorcerers. If your opponent already commits monsters to board and you draw Trap Hole, it can be really bad in that way. And given that our deck is trying to be a bit more aggressive and is playing things like Muka Muka, which can generally get over a lot of the monsters that you'd want to hit with Trap Hole, I decided to just cut it from the main deck, put it in the side deck in case we're up against a deck playing like Jiraigumos and things like that, and just go with this. And I think it actually works fine. If you want to include the trap holes, you could potentially, but honestly, I think that our trap lineup is pretty nice here. We are playing 41 cards, but honestly, I don't think that's that bad in this deck, as you don't really want to draw Harpy Lady Sisters. Yes, you want the deck to be somewhat consistent so you can draw into Elegant Egotist, so you're not going to go like too far above 40. But, you know, 41 isn't that bad here, especially when you do have the Thunder Dragons also slimming down your deck, making it essentially a 38 card deck if you don't draw multiples of it. So I think 41 is fine here, and I'm pretty happy with this build of the main deck. For the side deck, we have 3 Jiraiguma if we need to get a bit more aggressive, 3 Men in Your Bug if we need more removal, 3 Mass Sorcerer if we're playing a deck that we think can't really deal with this as well. This can be nice to bring in. It can draw us closer to our combo pieces. We have 1 additional Last Will if our opponent's on a lot of trap holes or Men in Your Bugs. We have 2 Robin Goblin if we want to go a bit more heavy on the hand control elements of the deck. And we also have the 3 trap holes, as I mentioned, in case our opponent's playing a beatdown heavy strategy with things like Jiraigumo and the like. I don't have anything in the fusion deck, although you probably should just for the mind games. But, you know, this is the bare bones of the deck, and I think it's actually pretty good. Sure, it may seem underwhelming in the deck breakdown section of this, but hopefully the games today will convince you that there's more to this deck than it seems. Okay, we've got a game against KOF 1996, and this is actually perfect because one of my main inspirations for my particular build of the Harpy deck was KOF 1996's Harpy deck that I actually featured on the channel a while back in one of my previous games. I was playing against them, and they just out of nowhere killed me with Harpies, and I was really, really impressed. And so that greatly influenced what I wanted to do with the deck. Also, I'll take this moment to also shout out Janjo from the Janjo Zone. I also took a lot of inspiration from their Harpy build that you may have seen in the game that I played Soul Control against them. So I sort of synthesized parts of those decks that I liked together and settled on my build of the deck. But shout out to both those players for paving the way before I got to this point. Anyways, while they may have played Harpy before, unclear what they're playing now, so let's see what they've got. We do manage to win the rock, paper, scissors, which is pretty nice, so we will get to go first here. And let's see how we do. This is an okay hand. We can Thunder Dragon for 2 Thunder Dragons. And we do have the Egotist and Last Will, which could potentially come up later. We also have Change of Heart to pair with Thunder Dragon, which is kind of nice. We can Change of Heart an opponent's monster, tribute it off for Thunder Dragon, and attack in. So that's something to consider, but unfortunately we don't have a monster right now, so we'll just have to set the Woboku, pass back to them. But I'm feeling pretty good about this hand for the future, so let's see how it does. They're just going to set 2 in card destruction. Wow, that's pretty brutal for us. That is really rough. We do get to draw a fair bit since we do have the Thunder Dragons. But that was a really good hand there. So this could be pretty bad. Luckily, we do draw the other Egotist that we have in deck. If we had lost both copies of it, then that would make our Harpy deck really sad. We'd have to rely on pretty much every other part of the deck instead of the Harpy stuff. And luckily, we do have some more monsters here, but we lost Change of Heart. We lost Raigeki. Oh, man, this is rough. We just got to hope that they don't have another card destruction for us here. They're just going to pass back to us, and, you know, I think we just got to get aggressive here. We're going to bring out the Muka Muka. If they do have Trap Hole, they've got Trap Hole. Kind of unfortunate, but looks like they don't, so we're just going to try attacking in. And they revealed a Magician of Faith, and they're going to get back that card destruction. Okay. This is a bit rough. It seems like they might be on a stall mill strategy even, if they're looping back the card destruction. So I think what we got to do here is we've got to set some cards from our hand. Yes, it does play into Heavy Storm a bit. If that set card that they've got there is a heavy, you know, we get majorly owned. We do have the Woboku to chain to it, which is nice. But, you know, we've got to just play our hand a bit. So we play a Swords as well, because our Muka Muka has now reduced down in attack quite a bit. And we are going to set the 7 tools. And we just hope that they don't have a heavy. But we really didn't want that hand to get card destruction, so we had to do it. They are going to card destruction here. I'm very glad we set what we did. And they reveal that they might not be on a stall mill strategy. It looks like they're on a sort of all-in fusion strategy, which is pretty cool. Gigatech Wolf is one of the fusion materials for Labyrinth Tank. The other is Cannon Soldier. There are a lot of neat things you can do, sort of just playing with these weird fusion monsters that have one good material and one bad material. So it's pretty cool to see in action. And, you know, it's pretty devastating against us so far, as we have not been able to really get our combo online, and we've had to commit a lot to board in order to save our combo pieces. They already set a monster this turn, so they won't actually be able to set that other. We do draw a Dark Hole, so we could Dark Hole here and then summon Muka Muka if we so wished. But Muka Muka's at 1800, which is pretty respectable, so I think we can just attack in. We will do that. It is a Sangan. They'll be able to get a Witch. And we're just going to set the other Muka and pass back to them. If they board clear here, honestly, we're somewhat okay with that, as these Mukas are not going to have much attack, or at least as much as they would otherwise. And if they don't board clear here, then we could potentially have 2 1800 beaters next turn. So feeling pretty good about that. They are going to board clear. They revealed that they had set a Raigeki. Kind of unfortunate. They're going to bring out a Witch and just activate a Sword of their own, pass back to us. We are fine with that because it means they're less likely to heavy. They definitely could, but they'd have to waste his swords, so feeling pretty good about that. They're going to set one and set another pass back to us. We draw a Reborn, but we can't really go aggressive here. We could Dark Hole, but if that's a recruiter, that would be pretty bad. I think what we gotta do is, if that is a Magician of Faith and they get back card destruction, that could be pretty bad for us, as we don't really want to lose the Dark Hole, as that's our last board clear. So what we're actually going to do here is we are going to activate the swords just preemptively. If it's a Magician of Faith, they will be able to get a spell back to hand, but based on whether they get card destruction or Raigeki, we can more adequately plan around what their next turn will be. So it is a Magician of Faith, but they do add back the Raigeki, which is good. This means we don't have to commit any more of our powerful spells to field. So we'll just pass back to them, and which will switch to defense. We draw Harpy Lady, which is pretty okay. We do have the Egotist set, so we do have combo online. It's just kind of iffy because if they set more next turn, we only have 1 7 tools. And so that might disrupt our combo a bit. We could set the other 7 tools now, just in case. But that plays a bit more into heavy. I mean, if they heavy the board away, we lose Egotist either way. I don't know. This is a tricky one. This is a very tricky one. We could also commit Harpy Lady to board, like set it. Make them waste a Change of Heart or a Dark Hole, potentially, if they want to get rid of it. And it looks like we're not going to do that, though. They do have Raigeki, so yeah, I guess it makes sense not to do that. They're going to activate another Swords, though, so we won't really be able to pull off the combo anytime soon, looks like. They're going to Pot of Greed and pass back to us. We draw another Harpy Lady. Okay. I mean, that's not the worst. We've lost one of our Egotists, so it's not like we'd be summoning that out from the deck. But now we can feel a bit better about committing it to board, just setting it. If they do Raigeki this, then we've got the extra one in hand, so we're not too concerned about that. And also, I believe our sword expires this next turn, so it's just good to have some defenders on field potentially. They're going to add 2 Thunder Dragons to hand, set one, and that will be the end of our swords. Luckily, this is their last turn on swords, I believe. So the swords will be gone for our next turn. And they will summon out Lodge and switch which to attack. We could Waboku this, but we've got the other Harpy Lady in hand, and we do want to potentially Dark Hole their board next turn. So we'll take 11, and swords will expire. Maybe we should have set the 7 tools last turn, because now they do have 2 back row. So this isn't a guaranteed damage hit here. We will just go for it. We're going to activate Dark Hole, clear the entire board away, and they will search out a Mass Sorcerer, which is kind of worrying. They do have Raigeki, so we're going to bring out a Harpy Lady, and now we are just going to go for the Egotist play. Note that we are making our big damage push here, but we're not necessarily going for lethal damage. Sure, we could Reborn back like a Cannon Soldier, get in for well over half their life points, but I think that we want to just play it a little bit conservatively. If we can get them to waste their Raigeki on this Harpy Lady board, then we do have Lodgin in hand to follow it up with. So I'd feel pretty good about that. Looks like they don't really have a trap that they're willing to use here to stop this damage push. So we're just going to set this 7 tools. This is in case that they have some counter traps for our Waboku to stop potentially the Mass Sorcerer push. But it looks like they're just going to set one, set another, pass back to us. So it seems like they want us to commit a bit more to field for their Raigeki. We're going to Pot of Greed here. Those are some pretty good draws. We could potentially go for a game here. If we bring out Lodgin, attack in for 3,100, and then Reborn the Cannon Soldier, we do have 2 7 tools to stop whatever they might have. I think we just got to go for that, and so we will. We're going to bring out the Lodgin. We could reasonably attack with the Lodgin here instead of the Harpy Lady Sisters, but, you know, effectively it's not going to matter as this is still game if we can get through. We're going to attack with our Harpy Lady and Lodgin. They will drop down to 1650. And main phase 2, we're just going to activate the Reborn. They do have a Solemn for that, but we do have a 7 tools. So that will be the end of the game. And that was pretty impressive, I've got to say. Even after Card Destruction ripped an Egotist out of our hand, we were able to get another one. And luckily the game lasted long enough that we were able to get the combo online, and even if we didn't kill them in one turn, we had a pretty good board position where we could kill them the following turn. Now you might say that yes, Harpy won the first game of the match, but this is against a pretty jank deck, so it doesn't really translate to playing against a regular deck in the format. But I still think it's rather impressive, and I think that we largely saw like a lot of good cards out of their deck instead of the more jank aspects of it. But, let's see how we do in the second game of the match and see if we're able to win that one as well. We will be going second here as we did win game one, so Koff will get to go first. And we draw Thunder Dragon in the opener, which is very nice. Thunder Dragon Muka is a great hand here. They're just going to set one pass back to us. Since we have 2 7 tools in hand, we might as well just Heavy Storm this. Because, we can clear it if it's a trap hole, bring out our Muka fine, and then set a 7 tools in case they have a Mirror Force or something else next turn. We will discard a Thunder Dragon, get 2 Thunder Dragons to hand to buff our Muka up to 2100, and then we're just going to attack in for 21. Main phase 2, we are going to set a 7 tools and pass back to them. Our Muka is still at 1800, which means that they'll likely have to use some form of removal on it. They do have that form of removal, and they will bring out a 7-colored fish and attack in for 18. It's a bit rough, but, it's just one 7-colored fish. We do have Dark Hole, so we could Dark Hole it, but I think, honestly, we want to wait for them to commit more to the board. Egotist is a nice draw for later, but we don't really want to use it now. So, unfortunately, we'll just have to pass here. And they are just going to attack in for another 1800 with 7-colored. Pass back to us, which is a great draw here, with which we can find Harpy Lady and then set up the Egotist play next turn, which is very nice. We are just going to Dark Hole the 7-colored, I guess because we figure that we can clear whatever they bring out next turn with the Harpy Lady Sisters. And this way we play around if they have a big damage push to kill us out of nowhere here. So we are just going to Dark Hole that, attack in with the Witch, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Cannon Soldier and just attack into the Witch. The Cannon Soldier makes me glad that I did Dark Hole there, as Cannon Soldier can get out of hand very quickly and potentially lead us to lose the game if they add something good there. We will just add a Harpy Lady to hand, and they'll pass back to us. We draw a Lodgin, so we could just go for the Lodgin instead of the Harpy Lady play. That might honestly be the move. However, that's a bit weaker to something like Fisher. So we might want to go for the Harpy Lady play instead. The Harpy Lady play also thins out our deck a little bit more. So I think we are going to go for that. If they do manage to clear the Harpy board, we do have Lodgin as a follow-up, which is pretty nice. So we will bring out Harpy Lady Sisters, attack over the Cannon Soldier. They do have Woboku, and we are going to actually 7 tools that. We don't want that Cannon Soldier sticking around. The Cannon Soldier can attack over the Harpy Lady. And also we do have another 7 tools in hand for later. So we will be able to deal 1850 here. Main 2, we will set a 7 tools, pass back to them. They do have swords, which puts a damper on our play a little bit. And it turns out that they do have a 7-colored fish as well. So they're going to attack into our Harpy Lady here. We will lose 500 from that. They're just going to set one and pass back to us. We draw Last Will, which is okay. We could actually use it. We could tribute over the Harpy Lady, Last Will out something, but honestly that just makes our board weaker. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to think about it for a bit, and then we are going to summon out a Lodgin. You might wonder why we're doing this, because this does play into board clears like Raigeki and the like even more. But the thing is, if they do have Raigeki, Raigeki just wins them the game here, because they just Raigeki, normal summon another monster, and that's the end of the game. So what we're playing around here is Fisher, not Raigeki, because we can't play around Raigeki. So we're just going to play around Fisher, summon out the Lodgin, and pass back to them. They are going to choose to crash into the Lodgin, which means that if they do have a Fisher, they will be able to activate it next turn. Kind of unfortunate. We draw Sangan, though, which is very nice. We'll set the Sangan. Yes, this does mean that if they have a Fisher, they can Fisher our Harpy Lady Sisters. But if they've got the Fisher, they could probably attack into the Sangan, then Fisher the Harpy Lady Sisters anyways. So we're just going to make this play. I think it's pretty correct here. And this does set us up for later if we want to tribute over the Sangan for a Thunder Dragon and then Last Will, which could be pretty good. They're just going to pass back to us, though. Looks like they don't really have a board clear, which is very nice for us. We'll set the Woboku, which is a great draw here. Gives us a very necessary piece of insulation. And also, you know, we should have done this earlier, but we'll switch Harpy Lady Sisters to defense. I'm so used to beaters in this format having very bad defense stats, but Harpy Lady Sisters actually has a better defense stat than an attack stat. So I should have switched it to defense earlier, but I just didn't notice. But 2100 is pretty good. It does protect it against something like Dark Elf if our opponent's on it. So we really should have switched it to defense earlier. But better late than never. So we're just going to do that. They're going to set one, and the Swords is gone. That was the third turn on Swords. We draw a Lodgin, which is pretty nice. We could just go for a fair amount of damage here. Summon out Lodgin, flip up the Sangan, try attacking over their sets. We do have 7 tools if they have a Mirror Force, so we're not really worried about that. We are going to do it. We're going to bring out Lodgin, switch Harpy Lady to attack, flip up the Sangan, and then just attack in here. They are going to lose a Sangan, grab a Witch, and we are going to attack in to their set with Harpy Lady Sisters. They're going to activate Woboku now, and we've got to decide whether we actually care about 7 toolsing this or not. And I think I actually do. And the reason why I do is because if we do manage to attack in for 1,000 next turn, then if we can get Cannon Soldier on field, then we've got 2,000 damage on board, which will kill them. And we can do that by tribute setting over the Sangan and activating a Last Will, which will bring out the Cannon Soldier. So since we basically have game on board next turn, as long as they don't have a board clear, we are actually going to just 7 tools the Woboku. And they will get back a Swords, but luckily that will not matter here because we can just do the Cannon Soldier play that I just mentioned. We're going to pass back to them. They're going to activate Swords. That's fine by us. And they will bring out a Lodgin, and they are going to try and attack into our Sangan. We do activate Woboku here because we do need that Sangan on field in order to pull off the 2,000 damage next turn. Also, if they do have a Monster Reborn and can bring back that Cannon Soldier in their grave after dealing 800 to us, then that will be the end of the game. So I think I do just Woboku here, and they're going to set one pass back to us, and hopefully this will be the end of the game. We're going to activate Last Will first, because if they do have a Solemn or a Magic Jammer for this, then we can just bide our time a bit more, and we don't have to go for the Thunder Dragon play. But it looks like that will be fine. And so this will actually be the end of the game, as there's no way to negate anything that happens from this point on. We'll tribute set over the Sangan and bring out a Cannon Soldier with the Last Will. We do have to add a monster from deck to hand with Sangan, but this won't matter. It is just the end of the game. And yeah, that was a pretty good match. I think that really showed off what Harpy Ladies can do. And I think in Game 2 especially, it showed off what the deck can do against another powerful deck. Because if you look at what KOF has in hand, it looks like they're playing a much more standard deck in Game 2 than they were in Game 1. They probably sided out a lot of the fusion cards that they had in Game 1. So the deck can win games against very competent decks, it looks like. And it's just a blast to play, honestly. While it may seem that Harpy Ladies is kind of a 3-card combo because you need the Harpy Lady, the Egotist, and the Sisters just has to be in deck. So it's basically a 2-card combo most of the time. And the Muka Muka shell that you're playing it in is very good at pressing the damage to the point where the Harpy Lady Sisters push can be devastating for the opponent. Also, being able to get a lot of monsters on field that easily is very devastating when a card like Cannon Soldier is so prevalent in the format and so powerful in the format. All in all, I think this deck is really sick. I don't think it will be tier 1 anytime soon, as the combo can brick. Egotist is not searchable. We did get very lucky in these games being able to draw it both times, and also not drawing Harpy Lady Sisters. But I think that this is a sort of jank that's a lot more consistent than something like Dragons, and it's just a blast to actually pull off. So all in all, I highly recommend checking out this deck if you want a fun jank strategy to play and potentially win some games with. But But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it as always. If you have any ideas for how you would potentially change the deck, please let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you liked the video, as always, give the video a like. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.